Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of back to basics. We're going to go and practice our pelvic tilts. So pelvic tilts, so sort of an absolute fundamental of our sort of Pilates. Some people are very natural at doing a pelvic tilt. A pelvic tilt? What's a pelvic tilt? A pelvic tilt. And some people find it very difficult. So with your pelvis, you can sort of think of there's a bony bit at the front of the hip here, and if you put your hands, you can almost, if you find your belly button, go just to the side of the belly button, you'll find there's a sort of a bony part of your hip. If you put your fingers onto the bony part of the hip, and if you bring your thumbs just round, you'll almost find another sort of bony bit just at the back of the hip as well. And what we're thinking of is we're thinking that that is going to form some sort of circle. So you can almost imagine there's a bucket, and the front of the fingers is the front of the bucket, the back of the fingers is the back of the bucket. And if we were to tilt the bucket forwards, almost as if you're trying to tip water out, what's going to happen is you're going to create this arch in the low back. So if we were to do the opposite, if we were to tuck your tailbone under and tilt the bucket so it's more flat, that's essentially what a pelvic tilt is. So what we're trying to do is when we're in standing, we want to think of our tailbone and we want to think about tucking this bucket under. So we're tucking it so that the bucket goes flat. And that's essentially a pelvic tilt. And one of the things that we'll always do whenever we go into standing, we're trying to sort of think, okay, we want to be in this tucked position. We want to have a flat bucket rather than a bucket pouring out of water. Whenever the bucket pours water out, it creates this bigger spinal curve, which puts a bit more pressure through the muscles and a bit more pressure through the joints of the bones of the back. So whenever I say tuck your bum, tuck and flatten the back, this is essentially the movement we're going to do. So if you practice that just now, if you put your fingers onto the front of the hips and then the thumb onto the back, and if you try to tuck your bum under and flatten that bucket out, and then if you tip the water out, so you can tuck it under and then tip the water out, tuck it under, and then tip it out. So we'll try that 3 more times. So we'll go 3 and down and 2 and down and then 1 and then down. Something else to think about when you're doing that is, one of the things people can do is as they're doing a pelvic tilt, they'll also flare their back. So what we want to do is as we're doing this, we're not lifting the chest. So as we do this movement, we're not also lifting the chest up. So we want to keep the space between your belly button and the ribs at the same distance. So we keep this tight as we do this. And essentially what we get is this dissociation between our upper body and the lower body. And it's a really useful technique to control the spine. So we'll try it again. We'll try it 3 more times. Try and get it nice and slow. Try not to flare the ribs up the way. And we're going to go for 3 and down and 2 and down and then 1 and then back down again. So what we'll do is we'll go down onto our hands and knees and we'll try that movement again. So we can go down onto your hands and knees. So if you come all the way down, hands are going to come under the shoulders, knees are going to come underneath the hips. So we can think of that same idea, and it's called the cat-camel. So whenever we go into this movement, we're going into the cat-camel. So we're wanting to tuck your tailbone, and you're arching your back right up towards the ceiling. We're tucking the chin under, and then we're going to do the opposite movement. We're going to sag your belly down to the floor while lifting the head. And then we do the same movement again. So we arch the back up towards the ceiling, and then we sag the belly button down towards the floor. And again, this movement encourages that pelvic tilt. So we're trying to encourage the pelvis to move. It's a really nice way of opening up the base of the spine. So those L4, L5, S1, we're trying to open the joints up as we arch the back to the ceiling, and then we're sagging it down and lifting the head. So we'll go for another 5 pelvis tilts. So we're arching up, 4, and then sagging down, and then arching up, and 3, and then sagging down, and then arching up, and 2, and then sagging down. And we'll do it one more time, so we'll arch all the way back up to the ceiling, tuck the chin under, and then come back. So if you're ever on your hands and knees, whenever I talk about neutral spine, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are somewhere in between. So we're not sagging the back right down towards the floor. We're not arching it. We want to have the back sort of in that neutral spine. So we've not got a big curve, we've not got a big curve, and you're letting the back come into that mid position. If we're on the hands and knees as well, we want to be pushing the floor away, and we don't want to sag the chest down to the ground. So we're engaging the shoulders as we do this movement. So one of the things we can do is we can keep your spine in neutral and then let the leg go out behind you. And then we can lift that leg. And we want to keep your spine and keep that pelvis in the same position. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to lift the leg and then let the belly sag down. So if you try the movement again, so if you go to neutral spine, keep your neutral spine, slide the leg out, try not to let that bucket move at all, and then lift your leg. And it's quite hard because what will happen is your pelvis will naturally want to tip out, and we want to keep it engaged for that whole movement. So if you drop the leg down, we'll change sides, and we'll try it again on the other side. So you're going to slide the leg out, keep your neutral spine, keep the spine in neutral, and then lift the leg up, and then drop the leg down, and slide the leg back in. So we'll try it again. Make sure that you're not sagging the belly down to the ground as you lift your leg. So we want to keep it engaged, slide the leg out, and then lift that back leg up. Hold it there. Make sure you're keeping your belly nice and tight. Make sure you're not sagging the belly down to the ground. We're keeping that bucket in a neutral spine position. And then we're going to drop the leg down, bring the knee back under, and we'll try it one more time on the other side. So we're going to slide the leg out, keep the back in neutral spine, and then lift up. Hold that position. We'll hold it there for 3 seconds. 2 and 1. Bring the knees back under, and then just drop your hips back to the ankle and bring the knees down to the ground. And what will happen is as you're dropping your hips back to the ankles, the base of your spine, those joints open up. So you curl yourself up, let the head just come down to the ground. And we're going to curl up. We call this the prayer position. Really nice curled up position. Lovely way of opening the joints in the base of your spine. We'll hold that for about 20 seconds, and then we're going to come up and we're going to go into sitting, and we're going to do a pelvic tilt in sitting as well. So we'll hold it for another 10 seconds here, letting the head just rest. Just keep the breathing nice and gentle. And then if you come up, we're going to come into sitting. So we'll go down into a sitting position. Legs are going to go straight out in front of you. And what will naturally happen, most people when they go into sitting, what will happen, your legs go straight out, you're going to round the back, your chest is going to fall down to the ground, your shoulders are going to slump. And what we want to do is we want to use this pelvic tilt that we've been learning about. We're going to lift the chest, and we're going to try and flatten the back out. Hands are just going to come onto the knees. So then you can slide and just slump back down again. And what happens with that bucket is your bucket, rather than it tipping backwards, so what's happening when you slump, your bucket is tipping backwards. We're trying to get that bucket back to that neutral spine position. You're going to get that nice straight back, and you're getting pulled up from the crown of your head. So if you slump back down again, we're going to lift the chest. relaxed as well. People will sort of raise the shoulders right up towards their ears, keep the shoulders down. And the other thing to think about is the chin. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to lift the head and look at the ceiling when we sit tall. We want this chin to be tucked under, and you're flattening the back of the neck out, and we're sitting up nice and tall. So then if you slump down again and just relax down, let the chin just collapse down to the floor, let the chest collapse, keep the hands onto the knees. We're going to sit up into that nice tall position again. So we're going to sit up tall. You're naturally going to move your pelvis as you sit up tall. Keep the shoulders relaxed, keep the chin tucked under. Try and get into that position that your mum's always told you to get into, nice and tall. Try not to drop the head down the way. So what we're not doing is we're not looking at our knees. We're not tucking the chin onto the chest. You're almost sort of retracting it under. So you're sort of trying to give yourself a few chins, essentially. So then if you slump down again, and we're going to do that one more time. So we're going to sit up nice and tall, nice flat back, keep the shoulders nice and relaxed. Tuck the chin under, so you're retracting the chin. Sitting tall, you've got a nice flat curve of the neck as well. And we're going to hold that position. We're going to hold it there. We're going to hold it there for 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. Let yourself slump down, and then just slide the hands down towards the toes. Go down as low as you feel able. So see if you can reach the toes. If you can reach the toes, grab the toes. If you can reach the ankles, grab the ankles. If you can reach the shins, grab the shins. Or if you can reach the knees, grab the knees. Try and apply an overpressure as well. So you're pulling yourself down to the ground. And if your knees pop up, keep the knees squeezed down onto the floor. So we're going to hold that position. Keep on holding. Keep the chin tucked under. And grab and go down as low as you feel able. Just keep on holding that position. So then we're going to come up and we're going to go down into lying. So this time we're going to go down into lying. Head is going to either come onto a pillow, or you can place the head onto a towel. When you're getting your neck in this position, so some people will naturally need a slightly bigger pillow or a slightly bigger towel under the head. If you find that you've got enough mobility, you can have your head directly onto the floor. If you find that when you put the head onto the floor, your head is almost cocking backwards and your chin is pointing to the ceiling, then you probably need to have a little pillow or towel underneath your head. I'm going to put a wee pillow under just now. So we're going to go soles of the feet onto the floor, and we're going to go hands down beside the hips. And we're going to think about that pelvis again. So if you want to, you can bring the fingers onto the front of your hip, onto that bony section of the hip. And if you wrap your thumbs around, you should be able to feel a little bit of a bony sort of bit at the back of the hips. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about tipping the bucket backwards. So what happens is the base of your spine flattens down against the ground. And then we're going to relax down. So again, you're going to think about this bucket and then flatten the back down while tipping the water out of the bucket up towards the head. Another thing you can sort of think about is you can think about your tailbone. The tailbone would be just at the base of your spine. And you can imagine that there's a light shining out of your tailbone. And what we want to do is we want to lift that light and sort of tuck the light so that it's pointing more up towards the ceiling. So rather than the light shining down along the floor, you're taking your tailbone and you're tucking your tailbone under and lifting that light so it's pointing more upwards towards the ceiling or towards the corner of the wall. So if you relax your pelvis down, we're going to do about 10 sort of pelvic tilts. And you know you're doing it right when your base of your spine naturally touches the floor. So you can almost imagine there's a grape just underneath the very base of your spine, and as you tip your bucket backwards up towards your head, you're squashing that grape, and then that's going to fill the bucket back up with wine, you know. So that's a bucket of wine would do anybody good. So you're going to squash that grape and then relax it down, or you're going to lift the light coming from the tailbone and then relax it down. Lift the light and then relax it down. If you're not sure if you're doing it right, you can take your hand just into the base of your spine, and you can try and squash your hand with the base of your spine as you're moving your pelvis. So we'll go for 5 more. So 5, and then relax, and then 4, and then relax, and 3, and then relax, and then 2, and then relax, and then last one, 1, and then relax. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that into action. So we're going to tuck your bum, flatten the back, and then we're going to bring one knee up and over the hip. So we've got your bucket, you've tipped your bucket up towards your head, you're bringing your knee directly over your hip. When we do this, what we don't want to do is we don't want to have the knee way up towards the shoulder. We want that knee directly over the hip. And what we don't want is we don't want the foot straight to the ceiling. We don't want the foot down towards the bum. We want this knee at 90 degrees. And then the other foot is going to stay on the floor. So you're going to keep your pelvis where it is, and then you're going to drop your toes down to the floor while keeping the pelvis as still as possible. So we're trying to teach a little bit of pelvic control as we're dropping the leg down. So you're going to drop down. You can either drop down, touch your heel to the floor, or you can touch down with your toes to the floor. Each time you bring the knee back up, try not to over pull it, so we're not bringing it right up towards the shoulder. We want to finish so that the knee is directly over the hip. So when we come up, the knee's over the hip, and then we drop back down again. You're keeping your pelvis flat down, so you get the base of your spine flat down, and then we're going to drop down and then back up. We'll go for 5 more, and then we'll try it on the other side. And again, it can feel a little bit unusual doing pelvic tilts as we're doing a movement, especially if it's the first time, but it's a really useful skill to work with. So we'll go for 1 more, and then just let the leg come down on the floor. We're going to change sides, so you can relax your spine, let the pelvis just do whatever it wants. You can put the hands back onto the bony bits of the spine, of the hip, just at the front, and then you're going to tip your bucket, flatten the base of your spine, float one knee up and over the hip. Your knee's at 90 degrees. You're not bringing the knee right up towards the chest. The knee is directly over the hip. You're going to keep your spine in this position, and then you're going to drop your foot down to the floor. You're going to lightly touch, and then you're going to bring it back up again. Lightly touch, and then bring it back up. And try and make it a nice gentle touch down as well, so we're not just letting the foot flap down to the ground. You're gently touching it down and then bring it up. Gently touch it down and then bring it up. So we'll go for 5 more. Same idea, you're trying to keep your pelvis in that position. You've got a flat back. You've squashed the grape. You're keeping the grape squashed directly underneath the spine. We're going to go for 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. Let the foot go down to the floor. So to stretch off, we can bring both knees up towards the chest. Bring one knee up, then bring the other knee up. And then you're going to hug the knees in towards the chest. As you hug the knees into the chest, what will naturally happen, if you get the knees close enough to the chest, your tailbone is going to lift off the floor. So when we hug the knees, we've got our relaxed hug of the knees, where we just bring the knees up and we don't squeeze in tight. Or we've got a tight squeeze in. So if you squeeze the knees directly up to the chest, squeeze them in as far up to the chest as you're able to. And with most people, what will happen is the tailbone will come up off the floor as we're doing that. So Pull the knees in, hug them in, hold that position. We're going to keep holding for a couple more seconds. And then we're going to let one leg go down onto the floor, sole of the foot to the floor, other sole of the foot to the floor. We're going to stretch off, so we're going to widen the arms out to the side, and then we're going to drop both knees down towards one side. We're going to hold that position. And then we're going to bring the knees up and we're going to change sides. So we're going to drop the other knees down to the side. The outside edge of your knee is coming down to the floor. The arms stay nice and stretched out. Try and keep the knees together as well. Try and keep the feet together. And we're going to hold that position. So what we don't want is we don't want space between the knees. We want the knees together. We want the outside edge of the knee down to the floor as much as you feel able. And rather than one foot coming in front, we've got one foot on top of the other foot. So you could bring the knees up and change sides. So drop the knees down to the other side again. And then we're just going to go into some continuous knee rolls. So you're going to drop the knees out, bring it up, change sides, bring it up, change sides, bring it up. Lovely way of just stretching off the base of the spine, stretching off the mid-back as well. Each time you drop the knees out, just try and let the outside edge of the knee come down to the floor and lightly touch the ground. We're going to go for 3 more, and 2 more, and 1 more, and then back to the center. So bring the hands down beside the hips. We're going to go for 1 more movement with a pelvic tilt. So again, if you want to, you can put your hands back on the pelvis. You can tuck your bum under, pour the water out of the bucket up towards the head. We're going to bring the knee back into our half tabletop. So if we were ever doing a full tabletop, we've got both legs up. We're just doing a half tabletop. Knees at 90 degrees, knees directly over the hip. Your space of your spine is flat down against the ground. Your tailbone is slightly lifted, just slightly pointing upwards. From there, we're going to go from a bent leg and we're going to go out to a straight leg. When you take your legs straight out, we've got both thighs pointing in the same direction. And then you're going to pull the knee back in again. Make sure not to pull the knee too far up towards the shoulder. We want that knee finishing directly over the hip. So you're taking the leg out, making sure that your pelvis stays in that same position. So we're keeping the base of your spine flat down, and then we're going to bring it back in again. So your leg goes straight out, and then pull it back in again, and then leg goes straight out, and then pull it back in again. So this is a 1 leg stretch. It's a nice, easy movement just to get us started. Pelvis stays in the same position. What you're not doing is you're not arching the back, and you'll notice that if I do my leg all the way down with no engagement of the spine, my base of your spine curves up the way. So we want to keep the base of the spine flat while we're taking that 1 leg out. So we're going to go for 3 more. So we're going to go leg out, 3, and in, and 2, and in. Last one, 1, and then in. Place the foot back down on the floor, and then we're going to change sides again. So we're going to keep your pelvis tucked, so the bucket is tipped up towards the head. You've squashed the grape underneath the spine. Then we're going to bring the knee up and over the hip. Your knee's not all the way up to the shoulder. Your knee's directly over the hip. You've got the knee at 90 degrees. And then we're going to take the leg straight out so that it's in line with the opposite thigh. So they're both pointing in the same direction. You're going to bring the knee back in and then let it go back out. Bring the knee back in and then let the knee go out. So you're pointing your toes. Each time you take the leg straight out, you're really trying to get a fully straight leg as you do that movement. We're not sort of just partially going out. We're trying to get that full straight leg. And we're going to go for 5 more. So 5, keep the spine flat down against the ground. 4, and in. 3, and in. And 2, and in. Last one, 1, and then in. Let the legs go back to the floor. Pull the knees up to the chest. Hug the knees in towards the chest again. You can do your relaxed knee hug, where your tailbone stays on the floor, or if you pull the knees in a little bit higher towards the chest, your tailbone and your bum are going to come up off the floor. So we're going to hold that position. So that is a pelvic tilt. We're going to just let one leg go straight out. Keep the other knee hugged in. And what we're going to do is we're going to squeeze the back of that straight leg down on the floor. So your leg is fully straight. Your knee, other knee, your bent knees hugged up towards the chest. And we're going to hold that position. And then we're going to change sides. So bring the other knee up. Let the other leg go straight out. Keep the knee hugged in. And then let the straight leg and squeeze the straight leg down on the floor. Hold that position. And then we're going to do one more stretch. So soles of the feet back onto the floor. Arms are going to go out wide. And we're going to drop both knees out towards one side. And we're just going to lie here. So now's a nice time to relax. You can close your eyes. You can let the breathing just go gentle. We're just going to go into this knee roll movement. We're just going to let the stretch do its magic. Just hold that position. Try and keep the breathing as gentle as possible. We're going to keep holding another 10 seconds. Then we're going to change sides onto the other side. And then that'll be us finished. So if you bring the knees up, we're going to change sides. Drop the knees down to the other side. All the way around. Hold that position. We're going to keep holding. Again, you can close your eyes and just relax. Let the breathing go gentle. So we'll hold for another 10 seconds. And then just bring the knees back to the center. You can have a sit up. And that is one of the fundamentals of Pilates. So pelvic tilt, it's a really important movement. Really useful sometimes to revise and go back to it. And if you're new, it's a nice way of learning a new technique. It's really useful for back pain. It's really useful for a number of different issues. So pelvic tilt, your bucket, your tailbone with the light, your compass. There's loads of different ways of remembering it. So if I ever say tuck the bum, flatten the back, that is what I mean. So nice to see you. See you later.